Hi, this is Eric Dixon, NFL Hall of Famer, and you're listening to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the FantasyJocks.com studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome into the show. It is Thursday, April 13th, 2017, and I'm going to tell you right now, you guys are both very lucky that I am here today.
We are?
There is a swarm of bees that has nested itself in my front yard.
There's something
and
going on.
I thought about just staying home.
The scientists are talking about, there's the bees are disappearing.
Yes.
Hogwash.
We have found them, America.
They're in Arizona?
They're all in Arizona right now. People are fleeing for their lives.
Did you see this at a baseball, at one of the spring training games? A swarm came through, and everybody laid down on the ground like it was a nuclear drill.
Wow.
Yeah, because there's bees. It's basically the same thing.
They were swarming my house 2 days ago.
Yeah. Is this the same? Did you send them to my?
I bagged them up. I took them to your place.
You
dropped
put them
off.
in the tree?
Yeah.
That's not nice.
If you asked me, which I guess you could do that right now, what do I fear more, a nuclear bomb or bees?
You're still on the bee
The
side.
answer is firmly bees.
That's strange. But
Happy you're here,
I'm not
Andy.
going out like that, man. Not going out.
You'll go out the nuclear route, whatever.
Yeah, that's
But
fine.
the bees, slow, painful.
If one of those
sting.
things had to kill me, I'm definitely choosing the nuke.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm dying one way or the other. Go
I
ahead.
wonder if, yeah.
This has gone down quickly.
I was going to say, I normally do a lot of fantasy research, but I've done a lot of bee research over the last 24 hours, and apparently all of them are Africanized in Arizona. This is what I've learned.
That's what the papers will tell you.
That's the papers? The papes?
When I go out and get my Sunday newspaper from the driveway, see?
The papers. We have a great show that is not bee-related today. We have our early tight end rankings. So I'm very excited. We're going to try to get through about 15 tight ends. To be honest with you, like the research on the tight end position was more interesting than just about everything we've done so far because you have so many of these guys that are – some are injury-prone. Some have had these big years and then down years. And projecting them forward, that's a position where if you pick the right guy – that advantage is huge week to week over your opponent. And it's not just the Gronkowski story, right? Like, yes, when Rob Gronkowski's healthy, he's great. And hint, he'll probably be at the top of our rankings. But outside of that, there are guys to identify and kind of say, maybe I draft this guy in the 7th, 8th round, and he's a difference maker for me all season long. So I'm really excited to talk about that. Quick question of the day, guys. We talk about streaming the quarterback position all of the time. Can we compare – this is the question that came in – can you compare streaming the quarterback position to streaming the tight end position? Is there, do you view it the exact same? We talk about these positions where you only start one guy, like the tight end in the quarterback position versus the wide receivers and the running backs. So can you compare those two for our listeners?
Yeah, I would say certainly. In fact, when I was looking up and researching this question, it almost appeared to me like it's more important or at least more valuable to stream tight ends than quarterbacks in the sense that, quarterbacks, if you had a quarterback 1 last year, they averaged in 6-point per touchdown leagues 25 points. That's the format we play in. And a tight end 1 in a half-point format averaged 9 points. But when you look at the defense and a good defense, what do they give up versus a bad defense? Usually like the top 5 in both quarterbacks and tight ends, it's basically about a 3-point swing in both directions, so a 6-point total swing. Well, a 6-point swing when your average is 9 is gigantic. When your average is 25, not so much. And even when you look at like last year's number 1 tight end, Travis Kelce, had a great season, and it wasn't even touchdown dependent, right? He was just a monster, and had led. Was he? Did he lead in targets? Or
no, not targets, but
he was close to the top there. I want 9 points at least from my tight end in a half-point format.
Sure.
I want that 10, but a 9 I will accept. There were 7 times last year that he didn't even have 9 points. And Jason Witten, Mr. All-American, dependable, give me that 9. Guess how many times, Andy, would you say he had 9 fantasy points or more last year? And keep in mind,
I don't know that answer.
He finished as the tight end 12.
Witten did?
Yes.
9 fantasy points or more. I'm going to guess 3 times.
You nailed it.
Really?
Which means
3?
13 times he let you down.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the story of the tight end position. But when you talk about streaming, we're going to go through 15 guys today, and then we all have a sleeper pick outside the top 15 that could be a guy that ends up in that range.
It's all about touchdowns.
I mean, right there, that's 18 guys in that we're going to talk about, and you're right, it is. It's all about touchdowns.
Finding defenses who are susceptible to the tight end is often far more advantageous than just rolling with a middle of the pack.
You're saying when you pick a streaming tight end, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, like you have the guy who, well, he's given me tight end 7 numbers. I would rather grab a guy who I know is going against the third worst defense against tight ends and hope for a touchdown from that guy.
Well, certainly. I mean, Jason Witten, I talked about him just a second ago. Only 3 times was he over, and yet he finished as a tight end 1. One of the reasons is because when he played Cleveland, one of the worst teams in the league.
That was a great strategy last year.
Right, play against Cleveland, and he was 8 for 134 and a touchdown.
All right, we have a new article up on the website, What's on Tape, about Michael Thomas by Kyle Borgnani. You can check it out at thefantasyfootballers.com. Our Twitter is at the FFBallers. If you want to follow the Hitman himself, you can do so at FFHitman. Jason is at JasonFFL. I'm at Andy Holloway. And check out jointhefoot.com, our fantasy football community. Lots of premium resources and perks for supporting the show. We appreciate everything you guys do out there to subscribe and review and listen to this show and support this independent podcast. Let's go ahead and jump into the news.
News and notes from around the league.
The look on Jason's face is he's very tired of talking about Marshawn Lynch.
Oh, man, it's just like the news won't die. I wish we got like a drop and made a drop 2 months ago, like the Marshawn Lynch
almost news
watch.
I was in my car this morning going through a drive-thru, picking up a little breakfast smoothie, and I had some 90s music on, right? There's a CNN documentary that's coming out about the 90s, which somehow we can do a documentary about the 90s. I don't really understand.
Because it was 40 years ago.
I know. It was 400 years ago. But a song came on that really summarized my feelings on Marshawn Lynch.
Oh,
so
wait, what do we got here? What do we got?
Just got me right in the feels.
Got you right in the junior high dance feels. Separated on the sides. Big space in the middle. Fellas on the left, ladies on the right. No one dancing.
No, Moses comes right through.
Saving the best for last. The news report this morning. Marshawn Lynch has begun the reinstatement process. Shortly after that report from ESPN's Ed Werder, you had Ian Rappaport hopping on and saying that he's going to be traded to the Raiders. So I guess that's what we expected. There were some weird reports last week about the Patriots as a potential destination.
There was also another weird report this morning
about Richard Sherman.
Wherever Sherman goes.
Apparently they're, what, are they tight?
I guess. I mean, they're buddies.
All right, so saving the best for last. I'm optimistic about Lynch. When you have 2 top 13 seasons out of Latavius Murray in Oakland, I think Lynch can be in that RB2 with RB1 upside range. So they're expected to work out a trade very soon, and so we'll see if that happens in finality. But another step forward for Marshawn Lynch returning. Any reason this isn't happening, Mike, at this point?
No. At this point, I was wrong about Marshawn Lynch coming back. I still stand by that he will be overdrafted.
I have never been more now I hope he doesn't come back. Now that you flip-flopped, Mike. Now I'm actually rooting against it.
According to, who is this? Tony Pauline, the 49ers are ready to give up on Carlos Hyde due to his struggles with injuries. And what do you make of this report? Because nobody knows more about injuries than you, Mike.
This is very true. I love guys who are injured often. I love Carlos Hyde. But this is what I will say about this.
Just embraced it.
You got to follow the trail. Because before this news was the news, the smoke in the bushes that came out, the San Francisco 49ers are possibly going to draft a running back at number 2.
Sometimes there's smoke in the bushes. Sometimes there's rumors in the bushes.
The bushes are doing a lot of things.
The other day, the bushes were talking back to Mike. I don't know what the bushes are where rumors happen.
We're back to Moses, man.
we are.
But they were leaking rumors that maybe they want to draft a certain running back at number 2, and people are like, no way. It's like, oh, well, you know what? We don't like our running back, so maybe we will. And now there's more news today, like of John Lynch saying, we're open for business with the number 2 overall pick.
April news. Now, if it's coming from Ian Rappaport about, things like the Marshawn, I at least pay attention to that. April news coming out from teams. I listen, but I mostly just in one ear and out the other and kind of barely keep in mind. I mean, the truth is, Carlos Hyde is very injury prone. They could deal with having another running back. This is not – we didn't need any news to, announce that to us. Like, breaking news, Carlos Hyde gets injured a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a memo. I mean, he's saying all this while he's staring directly at Jacksonville.
Yeah.
He's like,
you're right. You're right.
You guys, do you remember
draft misdirection, seeing what kind of packages people can put together?
And for the people who are like, well, this is a conspiracy theory, just think back to the Trent Richardson year where the Minnesota Vikings had, I think, was the 3rd pick, and the Browns were 4th. And they had Adrian Peterson on the team, and they stared at the Cleveland Browns and said, we're going to draft Trent Richardson unless you move up. And they did. And they got free picks out of it so the Cleveland Browns could move up 1 spot for Trent Richardson.
Jay Cutler contemplating retirement.
I believe you read that backwards. The NFL contemplating retirement for Jay Cutler.
Yeah, nobody's shown any interest in Jay Cutler. And Jay Cutler's lack of interest in playing, or so it seems,
for years,
is certainly for years, is certainly encouraging teams to do nothing about it. So a couple other quick pieces. Mike Gillislee and Damien Williams visiting the Patriots. They're restricted free agents, both of them, so it would cost the Patriots a 5th-round pick for Gillislee. Look, Gillislee is talented, so I don't know why you need 17 running backs in New England, but apparently they're willing to kick the tires on just about everybody.
Are they just trying to rack up frequent flyer miles?
This
they're
to
just
me,
flying people out.
Yeah, they're bringing everyone in, just building up those miles.
I think they heard us talk about how sad it is for free agent running backs, and they're just trying to make them all feel better.
I feel like this is actually indicative news, right? I mean, this isn't speculative. They brought these guys in, so it says to me that at the very least, they're considering another running back. And the Rex Burkhead signing, everyone said, oh, LeGarrett's not on the team anymore, and so Rex Burkhead is in. Look at all the touchdown opportunities, which always was weird to me because he's not that type of a back. Whereas Gillislee is, he was great at goal line.
8 touchdowns last year.
So I expect LeGarrette Blount or Gillislee or draft pick or someone to come in as well.
You have to wonder if, this is, hey, LeGarrette, look who we're bringing in.
Yeah,
we're bringing in some more guys. Accept our offer.
That's how it feels to me. And for your point, Jay, it certainly could be. I mean, because we have evidence of Gillislee being very successful, but they're basically the same size. I mean, Gillislee's 5'11", 218. Rex Burkhead's 5'10", 210. I mean, there's not much difference between those two guys.
All right, let's get on to the tight ends. Before we get there, though, we want to remind everybody, all the listeners, we are so grateful and thankful for the amazing listeners of this show, the Foot Clan. Genuine thank you for helping make us one of the larger podcasts out there. If you want to be a part of the show and a part of the community, be able to, we do a Thursday special podcast. Today's Thursday every week with just questions from the Foot Clan over at Join the Foot. So if you want to support the show, get an extra episode, get extra questions answered, and a bunch of other cool stuff.
Access to Foot Clan leagues. A lot of people ask us,
resources.
I'm looking for a great league. Where can I find one? Well, we got a resource for you.
And about 3,000 people to bounce your trade offers off of and things that you're thinking about.
3,000 amazing people, Andy. So go check out jointhefoot.com, and we appreciate your support.
Yeah, we invite you over there. All right, let's get into the tight ends.
Tight ends.
Not every show features some 90s Vanessa Williams. That's all I'm going to say. If you need a reason to support the show or run away from it, that's it right there. All right, number 1 on our consensus tight end rankings, our early 2017 rankings. And just a reminder to everybody, you can find our rankings on the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. These are our average rankings when you look at how Mike and Jason and myself initially set forth our tight ends and project them for 2017. Coming in number 1, appropriately, I think, Rob Gronkowski, still just 28 years old. We know the story of Rob Gronkowski. It's the story of when he's healthy, he's the most dominant force in the league at the tight end position. He can win you a week.
Possibly in football.
Yeah. No, that's honestly the truth.
He is a monster. He does everything great for a tight end. He's not just a pass-catching tight end. He is also a tremendous blocker. But last year was insane for Rob Gronkowski when he was actually on the field. But his career average is 14.5 yards per reception. Last year, in basically 6 games, 21.6 yards per reception. I mean, the guy was ridiculous. He was averaging over 100 yards per game. It was out of control. The question for Gronk will be, is he ready? I mean, I know he says he's ready, and by the looks of WrestleMania, you would think that he's ready to go. But will he be fully ready when the season comes around, and what will that draft price be? Because I'm never willing to go in on a tight end in the first round. I'm hesitant at the top of the second, but as we've been moving through these guys, just statting people, I'm finding this very nebulous blah group that I just am not liking. So I'm actually warming to the idea, if I'm in the middle of the second round, early third round pick, that I would actually take Gronk, and that would be the first time I've ever done it.
I don't even know what to make of that. That's interesting.
And I'm on board with that as well, which is a little different for me. If you think about it this way, right? If Gronk had an amazing year last year, if he played 15 or 16 games last year, he's drafted in the middle of the first round the next year. When he does that, the next year he's a number 1 draft pick.
He doesn't get injured anymore.
Right, as if he doesn't get injured anymore. But then he gets injured, and it's like, well, he's now a late 2. Well, no, he's not. He's the same guy that was worthy of a first-round pick.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
you're gambling on trying to get 16 games out of him, but maybe Brandon Cooks and more. I mean, maybe his usage goes down a little bit, which keeps him healthy, but he is a value. Right now he's at the 212.
Yeah, he's finally – I think the years of injury have finally knocked him back, especially with him missing later in the season. If you looked at that span there in October, November, the 6 games where he was healthy, his projected pace is like 1,800 yards. I mean, it's another tier.
Unsustainable.
Unsustainable, yes, but when you can put out a 6-game stretch like that, you've seen the career. You've seen the history. He's finished 8th, 1st, 4th, first back-to-back in 2014 and 2015. Only injury has kept him out of the top 3. That's it.
Wait, and last year he was 24, so it took him about 6 games to be a tight end too.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in this list, you're going to find guys who have injury problems with top 3 upside, and guys who are just kind of –
they don't get you up in the morning.
If they play 15 or 16
Alex
games,
Smith would welcome them to the roster.
Yes, he would.
So I want to transition now into number 2. Number 2 on our consensus rank is Jordan Reed. All right, and you just made the case for Rob Gronkowski and spending some earlier draft capital on Rob Gronkowski. Does Jordan Reed fall more into that nebulous uncertainty, or is he just kind of like where are you with him compared to last year? Because he was 12 games last year, 14 the year before. He's never played a 16-game season in his 4 years in the NFL.
And I believe the 12 is kind of the official, but
just like Gronk has an official 8, but he really only played like 6.
Well, realistically, I mean, you remember after he took the hit that knocked his collarbone out of his body,
right?
He still tried to play games and was completely useless until the final week of the season. So he was out there technically, but he wasn't really doing anything. So it's I don't know the actual number. I would say it's probably 9 games that he really played. But it's the same spot for Jordan Reed. Last price check on him was the back of the 4th round, and for PPR, I mean that's outrageous because Jordan Reed he's a bit different than these other tight ends where you have the high touchdown upside, but he's a 10-yard per catch guy. Where most tight ends, they're in that 11+ area, and they always get a good chunk when they get a reception. But Jordan Reed is just. He's fed the ball. I think I mentioned this on the last show that when Jay Gruden was asked about the offense, he said the offense runs through Jordan Reed.
And that's why he gets hurt so much. They run right through him.
Yeah, the reality is, right, we just talked about Gronk being worth that second round. Some years he's worth that first round. Now he's good value late second round. In a PPR, which is becoming more and more common, we play in half point. All of our, the FootClanLeagues.com, those are half points. In when you get points per reception, full PPR, I have them statted out. In our UDK, Gronk has 245 points on the season, according to how I believe it's going to play out. Jordan Reed has 244.
So you'll take him in the 412 versus 212.
Absolutely. I'll take him in the back of the third to make sure I get him if I'm in a full-point PPR league. And
that would be a really tough call for me. I see the logic behind it because the touchdown upside of Gronkowski, those week-winning performances, that might pull me up to him. But, I mean, 2 rounds later for Jordan Reed?
Jordan Reed has those. I mean, just remember.
You're going to need to draft them both if you want a tight end in there every week.
And look, you lose Deshaun Jackson and you lose Pierre Garçon. Yes, you brought in, Terrell Pryor and you have Dotson coming up, but there's no chemistry there. There's one guy, well, Crowder as well, but Jordan Reed has that chemistry.
Yep.
It's
no
just
doubt.
risk versus reward on injury.
I forgot to tease this earlier. We have a show after the show on YouTube today.
Speaking of
injury and pain, we're gonna get into some gruesome childhood injuries.
Childhood, yes.
Just things that have happened to us.
Do they have to be gruesome?
No.
I was just teasing it. That's how you sell something.
Oh, you won't believe injury number 2.
I will. You won't believe injury number 2. I will tell you. One of the stories involves underpants.
Uh-oh. Well, all right.
My story involves rollerblades.
Yours. Okay. All right.
You had me at underpants.
Yeah. All right. Number 3 on our consensus top 15 or so tight ends. Travis Kelce, the number 1 tight end in 2016. We've talked about it at length. Last year was a bit of a down year for the tight end position as a whole. Obviously, these top 2 guys on our rankings both didn't play a full season. I think if either of them had, Travis Kelce's not sitting there at the top of the list. That being said, Travis Kelce, 3 straight years, 16 games, 3 straight years, a top 10 tight end. If a guy can be 7 and 8 in 2014 and 2015 and jump up to that 1, 2, 3 range like he did last year, you have to look at him and say, hey, if I draft Travis Kelce, oh, man, that ADP, though. If you draft Travis Kelce,
he was number
he's
1.
healthy, but he's being drafted ahead of Jordan Reed.
So where is his ADP right now, Andy?
In PPR, it's 310.
Yeah,
that's
in standard, it's 405, and both of those are higher than Jordan Reed. I just can't see Look, the offense in Kansas City, they've installed a ceiling on that offense, and his name is Alex Smith. And there's just the volume and the consistency levels there. It just brings me pause, right? It brings me pause for those otherworldly type of games. I really like Travis Kelce. I think Travis Kelce has every physical ability to put up a number 1 type of season.
He does have every physical ability to do that, and Travis Kelce was the most interesting guy when I was going through statting, maybe tied with Kyle Rudolph for me. These 2 guys, I really was intrigued by what I saw when you look at the numbers, when you look at the film, you take everything together. Kelce, he missed his rookie year, right? So his rookie year was his sophomore year, but in that year, he had 67 receptions. The next year, 72. The next year, 85. These are trending upwards. He is a freak of talent. I mean, there's no doubt that he is as capable as any other. You put Travis Kelce on the Patriots, and I'm not saying he is Gronk,
pretty close,
but he is going to be definitely worth it. But when I was digging into the knock on Kelce is touchdowns, right? I mean, he's just not. He's not a crazy touchdown guy. 5 touchdowns this last year, only 4. But I looked into how they were using him and those valuable red zone targets for tight ends. And one thing stuck out to me that was crazy. You have a list of guys, other guys.
Are these red zone or these 10?
These are 10 and in, so right? The really, truly valuable things. Because from the 10 to the 20, it's not that crazy value. So inside the 10, Jordan Reed had 8 targets. He got 5 touchdowns. Gronk had 6 targets, got 5 touchdowns. Gates had 8 targets.
How do you got a touchdown? You can do you score them or do you?
Yeah, Gates got. I got.
I didn't want to hear that 45 more times for the rest of the episode, so I apologize.
So Gates, 8 targets, 5 touchdowns.
He took them.
So those are great tight ends. Cameron Brate, 8 targets, 4 touchdowns. Martellus Bennett, 7 targets, 4 touchdowns.
All inside from the targets
10
inside the 10.
And Travis Kelce got 8 targets inside the 10, but only 1 touchdown out of that. That, when you talk about Cameron Brate and Hunter Henry is there and all those other guys, when you get that amount of targets, you should have more touchdowns for a tight end his size in that. So I think his touchdowns go up this next year.
Yeah, and I this. I said in the studio. I don't agree with you. I think you can look at a stat like that and say Travis Kelce's not as good at scoring touchdowns than other tight ends. I mean,
but that's ridiculous.
Why is it ridiculous? He's had 5, 5, and 4 the past 3 years.
The reason it's ridiculous is because there's nothing in Travis Kelce when you watch film, his ability to catch, his ability to box out.
I don't agree with you. I think Travis Kelce is not in. He's not in the Gronkowski mold. He is not.
I agree with that.
He is a yards after the catch type of guy. And last year, to me, the reason he made the jump up is he went from the 60, 70 reception range to the mid 80s.
But what you're saying then is, I agree, he's not Gronk, but an old Antonio Gates, a young Hunter Henry, a Cameron Brate, all those guys. You're saying he doesn't have the ability to do inside the 10 what they did?
To some degree, yes.
All right.
I agree.
I mean,
I disagree with the contention that his touchdowns go up. But, look, the numbers, if you want to lean it on the side that Travis Kelce isn't bad inside the 10, the numbers would come back, right? They'd come back to some better proportion of those targets being touchdowns. If that's the case, if Kelce had 8 touchdowns, he's a guaranteed lock as a top 3 tight end.
Yes. So nice thing about
you brought this up with T.Y. Hilton or some other wide receivers. There's not like when a guy is not heavily touchdown dependent like Tyler Eifert.
Right.
So Travis Kelce's not touchdown dependent. He plays 16 games the last 3 years, not touchdown dependent. Your risk on Travis Kelce of him being outside the top 12 is like there's no chance other than injury.
Right.
And your upside, if you're right and he goes up to 8 touchdowns, it's humongous. But him dropping, he's not going to go under 4. So.
If he does, it would be what,
so. Travis
3?
Kelce, though, do you have him ranked ahead of Reed?
No, I've got him behind Reed.
So
and
do you
the
take
ADP,
Reed at the later ADP?
Absolutely. So
okay.
I'm making the case for those who take Kelce, but it won't be me in my drafts because of the value of where he's going.
The price is not worth it.
All right, number 4, Gregory Olsen,
Jason's favorite player.
Greg Olsen. Look, the consistency is incredible for Greg Olsen. Since 2012, he's finished 6, 7, 4, 5, 3. His ADP's in the 5th round in a standard league. It's just at the end of the 4th in a PPR league. Last year, I think there was this – we looked at the year and we said, okay, he started off on fire, the story there, Jason trading for him, and then what happened at the back half of the year. Cam Newton wasn't the same player last year. Cam Newton's stat line wasn't the same last year. But Greg Olsen's the same guy. He plays almost every snap, which you love, right? He doesn't come off the field.
I took a look back because I just wanted to see how intense that was. And of the last 80 games, 51 times he has played 100% of the snaps.
It's an Iron Man.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's played, 16 games every single year since 2008? So he's going to be on the field.
He's a beast.
Talk about, between Kelce and Olsen at what we have at 3-4 and the two guys at the very top.
Yeah,
this is all risk aversion here.
It absolutely – well, it's the ceiling. I mean, Greg Olsen, he has – when everything switched for Greg Olsen of everyone jumping on saying, oh, he's a top 3 guy, it was because he had a bit of a higher touchdown a year, but that's not who he is. I mean, you talked about Kelce's targets from inside the 10. Greg Olsen had 2 receptions of targets from inside the 10. One was a 9-yard touchdown. One was a -2 loss. And then you look at the pace when he started. You thought, whoa, he's on fire. He's going to be the best tight end. He had 94.1 PPR points, right? He was on a pace for 188. Travis Kelce had 180.
Yeah.
So it wasn't actually that great. It was just he had a couple monster games at the beginning of the season, and we talk about this all the time. When a guy goes off in the first 4 games, it burns in your memory of this is what I expect for the rest of the year.
Is there a team makeup in fantasy that would justify a Kelce or Olsen pick directly over Olsen or Gronkowski at the exact same draft position? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, if you look at Reed and Gronkowski, each in the last 4 years, there are 0 combined seasons of 16 games.
Sure.
You look at Kelce and Olsen, every single season is 16 games in the last 4 years for both of them. So is there an argument that can be made in your mind if you have a team, let's say you have some more risky players on your team, is there a reason to just draft Greg Olsen ahead of Jordan Reed? Is there a reason to I'm just saying you're on the clock. You're sitting there 4:05 and all 4 guys are on the board. Is there any situation where you would say, hey, my team has a certain makeup, so I'm going to take Travis Kelce?
Wait, all 4, as in Gronk as well?
Sure.
If we take him out, then I could say yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't. I mean, the ceiling is just too high. But I do think, I mean, one of the, the quick question of the day was streaming tight ends and quarterbacks. Both are valuable. But I will say this, when you are weekly, every single week streaming both, it becomes a little bit more difficult because you've got to pay more for fab and more waiver wire. You got to drop more guys. So when you grab a Greg Olsen, that frees you up that roster spot where you're not going to be streaming the position, gives you a little bit more security. And if you're a late-round quarterback, which if you listen to the show, I'm sure you are, then that has a helpful nature to the way that you play.
I know we have to bust through these tight ends, and we have a lot on the list, but another question's popping into my mind that I just have to ask you guys. Let's say you took Gronkowski at the back of the second round, okay? Let's say you're in the 5th round.
0% chance. I already know what you're going to ask.
Would you take Jordan Reed in the 5th? Because
0%.
Even if you have a league with a flex position, you don't think that the value could be there for Jordan Reed?
And
with the touchdown totals or reception totals.
And people frequently ask about this, especially when it was
a preemptive strike from our listeners on their behalf.
Well, and they often, when it was Gronk and Graham, was, I'm going to take them both because the problem with that
Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski years ago.
The problem with that is, I mean, maybe your league has 2 tight end slots. All right, that's a completely different argument. But if you're talking about for the flex, it's flex. It's a flexible spot. If you take 2 tight ends that early, that is not a flexible spot anymore. You are locked into playing 2 tight ends, or you're playing the game of, well, I'm going to draft him and I'm going to trade him later. It's just
and I think
that's not a game I play.
I think more importantly than that is what you are losing. You are now saying that in 2 of your top 5 picks, you don't get another running back or wide receiver, which you need multiple players every week. So, yeah, I mean, that's my worry is they might be worth it points-wise, but you're losing out on more important positions.
Well, Jordan Reed last year, I know he missed some time. That would have put him in the Jordan Matthews range of total points scored in terms of what he put up last year, which is like, I don't know, wide receiver 40 or something like that.
Yeah, it's not
strong. If you look at what Kelce put up, however, you're in the wide receiver 17 range, 18 range, just for perspective.
So that's gross.
Julian Edelman, Demaryius Thomas. I mean, obviously, if Demaryius Thomas is sitting there in the 5th round, there's no chance. There's no chance on earth you're taking Travis Kelce or Jordan Reed.
So do not draft 2 tight ends unless you have to start 2
public
tight ends.
Service announcement. Number 5 on our list, the much begrudged Jimmy Graham.
Yeah,
much maligned. That's a better word for it. Look, you just have to look at the consistency numbers. Brooks put together this doc showing you kind of the rankings and the consistency of these tight ends. Look, he had the major injury, but you go back to 2011. Here's his ranks and how he finished the season. 2,
Breeze,
1,
Breeze,
1,
Breeze,
3,
Breeze,
18, which was the injury year, and then 4 last year.
Yeah, no, it was last
year.
And
they used him. They used him, and they looked to use him on the field.
Did.
And he came back from the injury, and nobody expected the season that we had here, and nobody's expecting it again because he's going in the middle of the 6th round.
So here's my thing for Jimmy Graham. I can absolutely astonishing comeback from the injury that he suffered. I mean, tip of the cap to the work ethic of Jimmy Graham busting his butt to get back. Where it's interesting for Graham, and there is no definitive answer for this. His first 8 games, he came out, pretty on fire for a tight end. He was the tight end 4 in points per game, 38 receptions, 545 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's the first 8 games. The second 8 games, though, so I guess the second half of the season, tight end 12 in points per game, which is still okay. That's still okay. He ended up finishing tight end 9, but where it becomes interesting, you have to figure out what narrative do you want to buy into. Did he wear down the second half of the year? Completely possible with the injury that he suffered. But you would think that his production would actually go up because the second half of the year, that's when Russell Wilson was actually healthy, when he could actually extend plays, run around. And you can see that in Russell Wilson's rushing yards when he went about 4x in the second half of the season. So it was with that, the playability to extend things.
It brings you some pause.
Why did Jimmy Graham's production why did it come down so much?
Right.
Well, and another thing I would just say as a little point of worry, and I like Jimmy Graham. He's, I think, my number 6 personally, my number 6 tight end this year, is you look at all of those guys. When we were arguing about whether Travis Kelce's 8 targets should yield more, I named a bunch of other guys that had 7, 8 targets. Jimmy Graham had 2 targets inside of the 10 on the year.
Those have to go up.
Maybe that's just how they're using him. Maybe they get down there and they're trying to run the ball, and I hope they're not using him to block. That's fruitless.
That would be
2 targets inside the 10 is unprecedented for Jimmy Graham because he's an ISO guy. You throw him out on the outside, you ISO him on an LB or a DB, and you just throw him up and throw the ball.
I would say this. I do think that your assertion that it would go up is the right call. He had as far as inside the 20, most people just look at red zone. He had 17 targets inside the 20, but only 2 were inside the 10.
They just need to scooch it up.
Just get a little closer.
All right, number 6 on our consensus rankings is my number 4 guy, a guy I have ahead of Travis Kelce, the aforementioned, and Jimmy Graham.
That seems pretty high, Andy.
Tyler Eifert.
Where do I have him?
Oh, gosh, where do you have him? Tell me, Mike.
Number 3, baby.
Sure. Okay, so I got him 4. That means Jason's pulling him down.
Pulling him way down.
Yeah,
He's holding on.
All the way down to number 7.
We're trying to bring him to the front of the line, and Jason's holding on to his ankles, yanking him behind. I don't blame him because the guy can't stay healthy. But Tyler Eifert is my number 4, Mike's number 3, our consensus number 6, and he is being drafted ahead of Jimmy Graham, and I would take him ahead of Jimmy Graham as well. I mean, Tyler Eifert, when he's on the field, I think he's the highest efficiency fantasy points per target of any tight end in the league, but you're betting on him being able to stay on the field.
But so here's the thing: we're on tight end number 6 with Tyler Eifert. We've discussed 2 guys who are actually safe. So for me, I mean, it's all about draft price and the possible return on that risk. And Tyler Eifert he has top 3 potential. He's a touchdown machine. We've already seen that. High risk. He's never played 16 games. I had a fun fact down here that his career yards is 1,491 yards. That's in 4 seasons. That's only 164 yards more than Gronk had in his 2nd season. Like 1 season. So I just thought that was kind of funny for how long Eifert has played. But when he was on the field last year, weeks 8 through 14, so that takes off his first game back and his injury game out, he was the tight end 1 in points per game. The yardage came up. That was the knock on Eifert when I was out on him last year the yardage wasn't there and his draft price was way too high for me. But as of right now, these guys who are in that upper tier of tight end who can finish high and really be a difference maker every single week, I think Eifert is the guy who I'm looking at putting my chips on in the back of the 5th round.
What you saw from Eifert last year wasn't much different than what you saw from him during his breakout season. If you project his games last year over the season, it's 58 for 788 and 10. His breakout year, he was 52 for 615 and 13. So he's not going to be an 85-catch guy. That's not going to happen with Tyler Eifert. However, he's a touchdown monster. I mean, he's a double-digit guy, and if there's anybody I was going to bet on with double-digit touchdowns other than Gronkowski over a full healthy season, I'm betting on Eifert above them all.
I would agree with that, but you just spoke to why he's my number 7, and I don't have him quite as high because, while I said, I would consider taking Jordan Reed, late 3rd, I don't need to. He's back of the 4th, and Eifert is early 5th, so they're near each other, and I would much rather have the guy who's also had double-digit touchdowns who can get up near 100 receptions because he's the center of the offense. There's no doubt A.J. Green is the center of the offense for Tyler Eifert. Personally, there are guys later, and I'm going to segue right into my favorite guy this year, Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah, I don't blame you here.
Jordan Reed's ADP is going to ruin everybody, isn't it? His ADP being so low? I mean, it seems like out of all these decisions, his ADP being so low makes him the best decision out of a lot of these guys.
Not for me. For me, I would rather have Kyle Rudolph than Jordan Reed.
Because his ADP is ridiculous.
Because his ADP, and I'm talking PPR, right, where he is very valuable because, I believe he was second in the league, number 1 in targets.
He led in targets, because he's got Sammy Biscuits.
Yeah, right.
Most accurate quarterback of all time.
And so you've got Kyle Rudolph here, who is almost in the 9th round. I would much rather spend a third, fourth, and fifth round draft pick on another running back and another wide receiver that I really love and grab Kyle Rudolph. We talked about, the consistency of even Kelce, who finished number 1. He still had a lot of weeks where he kind of crapped the team. Kyle Rudolph didn't. Kyle Rudolph was tied with Greg Olsen for the most amount of helpful games. And when I was thinking about, okay, so Sam Bradford, we have to remember the truth of what happened last year in Minnesota. Sam Bradford got there a minute before the regular season started.
He pulled up as the first game was going on.
Ran straight out there.
To the point where he didn't start week 1 because he didn't know the offense. And so I think it's completely legitimate. Obviously there are just massive problems with saying, well, this guy did good the second half of the year, and so you extrapolate that out. But for the case of the Minnesota...
That's like my favorite argument, Jason.
Right, I know. But for the case of the Minnesota Vikings, I think the second half of the season is just a little bit more indicative of kind of how their offense is wanting to work and will work with Sam Bradford because, they didn't have a training camp. They didn't have a preseason. They didn't have anything. They had week 2 as their preseason game 1. And the second half of the year, even though Rudolph was still good in the first half, he was unbelievable. We're talking 100 receptions, 1,000 yards, and we've seen in the past he can get touchdowns. He got red zone opportunity. If he's going by the 9th, I just like that value much more.
I didn't realize that he was all the way back there. I'm pulling up the fantasy football calculator ADP again because is this accurate of
8-12? So
but I'm saying 8-12 in PPR and 7-12 in standard. What are the PPR people doing?
They're giving him the Jason Witten treatment.
He turned into a PPR guy with Sam Bradford.
Yeah. No, I love him. All the arguments for Kyle Rudolph at that ADP are solid.
Only 5 games under 8 targets for Kyle Rudolph.
Who's going ahead of him? Number 8 on our consensus ranks. Or actually, he's not going ahead. He's going just behind. But in PPR, he's going ahead, and that's Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, the last 2 years, actually finished the year 9th and 6th as a fantasy tight end. Last year, you had the inverse of Sam Bradford. You had him leaving, and you had a rookie coming in, and that rapport that we loved, the things we love about Kyle Rudolph, those all were manifesting with Sam Bradford at the end of the year in 2015. We expected Ertz to come out and be on fire. He got it together back half of the year. That's been the story for Zach Ertz the last 2 years. The second half of the season, he's basically the number 1 tight end.
Yeah, he is.
So, nice value, 907.
But Andy.
Vopo. Vopo.
But didn't Alshon Jeffrey come and didn't Torrey Smith come?
Yeah, it actually is a downgrade to me. I mean, those two guys showing up.
Good job,
maybe not,
public opinion.
I did it. I got something right.
Maybe not the Torrey Smith part of your argument, but Alshon Jeffrey arriving, it does give me pause on the unlimited upside of Zach Ertz. I do think he's going to be in that 75 catch and above range. So for him, much like Travis Kelce, he just doesn't find the end zone very often. And did you happen to look at Zach Ertz's targets inside the 10?
I can pull them up for you.
I would love to know that. Just pure curiosity, no agenda, other than I want to be right.
I can tell you. I can tell you this is what we have in the first 9 games. I have the red zone data, but first 9 games, 3 red zone targets. Last 5 games, when his production went insane, he had 11 red zone targets,
and he only scored 4 touchdowns on the year.
Yeah,
so
he's put him in the fantasy football strategy of second half when you're acquiring Russell Wilson and Doug Baldwin. Let's get Zach Ertz in there too.
There are tight ends that just like running backs, right? You got red zone running backs and you got those between the 20 guys. I'd love Zach Ertz and Travis Kelce between the 20s, and then I'd like to usher in Gronkowski and Eifert for that inside the 10-yard line.
To answer your question, to support your argument, which actually supports my argument, Zach Ertz got 5 targets inside the 10. He did score 2 touchdowns on the 5 targets. A reminder, Kelce got 8 targets, only got 1 touchdown.
A reminder?
In case, you missed it.
All right.
20 minutes ago.
Number 9, Delanie Walker. Number 10, Eric Ebron on our consensus top tight end early 2017 rankings. Delanie Walker went out, put up another great season, always plays 15 games. For some reason, he takes one off every year. He's literally played 15 games.
The man loves to fish. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, there's one good weekend.
Those bass, they're biting in Tennessee.
Look, the last 4 years, 11, 8, 4, 5. The story here is we expect and keep expecting Tennessee to bring in more help at the wide receiver position. It hasn't happened yet. We can watch the draft, but I mean, any reason why Delanie Walker isn't going to do what he's been doing?
Yeah.
Well, he's.
I mean, I don't want to draft him in the 6th. I don't think.
In that you're still paying the ADP price for that breakout.
2015.
Yeah, for that monster year, but that's. I'm not expecting that. You have that sandwiched between almost 2 identical years in 14 and 16.
He's a mid-60s guy.
Where he's great. He's the type of a tight end that you can get and you plop in there, where I think plop him into your tight end.
He's a plopper. Yeah.
And I think Delanie Walker is better than streaming. And you put him in, you forget about it. But you're not gonna end up with a top 4 guy. I mean, I guess he was number 4 in 2015 in his monster season. So I will say you will not get a top 3 guy from Delanie Walker. So your upside is going to be capped.
Yeah, and while we say we keep waiting for them to bring someone in, they are going to. I mean, I will be blown away if they don't draft a wide receiver and or a tight end as well. And we can't ignore the age elephant in the room. He's going to be 33 this year, which tight ends can play later. And his game, I don't think requires, crazy, he's not going down the field for 40-yard bombs.
Jason Witten.
Right, exactly. But he's just uninteresting to me. He's not going to win me a fantasy championship is how I feel. And he's going to cost me, in the 6th round, there are good wide receivers there that I want.
This guy, surprisingly, probably the most surprising guy on our list being in our top 10, this guy could win you a championship if you're drafting him with your last pick, because that's about where he's going, into the 13th round. Eric Ebron.
Yes.
The endless optimism surrounding Eric Ebron's potential continues.
From Jason Moore.
From all of us, I think. I mean,
really? I've just always I feel like maybe it's because I've said too many nice things.
I have Eric Ebron at number 8.
All right.
Okay. I got Eric Ebron at number 8. Last year, only played 13 games. Look, 61 for 711, only scored 1 touchdown. You want to talk about a guy that the math doesn't add up on the touchdown totals, it's Eric Ebron for me. It adds up enough for me on the Kelce totals just because he's never put up more than 5. Eric Ebron had 1 touchdown last year. 1. Otherwise, he was pretty darn good in 13 games.
Yeah, and again, he only played 13, and it's completely fair to say, okay, well, what's the pace of that on 16? That's a 75 reception year. He was very involved. And, there's rumors in the draft that maybe they'll go out and they'll get Njoku or they'll get someone. Then I will bump. Well, if that were to happen, I would bump him down if they don't want to, keep paying for Eric Ebron. But the dude he has gotten so much flack because he was drafted number 10, and he's supposed to be the superstar. Right now, 3 days ago was his birthday where he turned 24.
Happy birthday.
He is a young man, and in his first 3 years, I mean, tight ends take
He's
a while.
never heard that Vanessa Williams song.
Yeah, never. And in his life.
Saving the best for last.
The thing is that tight ends always take a while to really come into their own, and we're writing him off after 3 seasons where he was basically 20, 21.
I don't know if we're writing him off. We're just kind of like looking at him.
I'm saying the fantasy community.
Yeah,
I don't think we are. I mean, he went from 25 receptions to 47 receptions to 61 receptions. And you talk about the drops. Oh, he drops passes. He caught 71% of his passes last year. There's a couple memorable drops. They stick in your head, and they write a bad narrative. I think that if they don't draft someone else, he's going to be involved, and he's fine in where you're drafting him.
He was a 5-touchdown guy the year before on 15 less targets. If you remember, this was the Tyler Eifert story, too, before the breakout year for Tyler Eifert. It was kind of like we're just waiting for something to happen. I think you just have to keep
Eifert's wait was much shorter, to be fair.
Agreed. Agreed. But Eric Ebron has the draft pedigree and the age and the quarterback and the consistency in that offense that makes you say, hey, 13th round, take the guy, put him in your lineup, and watch for 3 weeks.
I have him as my number 12 and half point right now, but the fact that he's going in the 13th round is I can get in on that if you're waiting.
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't work out, string the resistant
draft. Where do you have him?
I have him at 12, so I have him as
Jason,
a 1.
Where do you have him?
I think I've got him
right at 10.
8. Let me look.
Yeah, I mean, I just like the upside with the draft position.
And I'll say, I think that the 13th round
9
is very correlated with when people bought into Eric Ebron. If you remember last year, he had this stretch of games where he was it looked like it was happening. It's happening for Eric Ebron. 79 yards, 92 yards. I'm picking him up 70 yards, and then
that was the week.
And then nothing.
Literally.
You get nothing. You get no receptions.
That was probably the week that he was the most started in the entire year. Like his starting percentage.
I agree. That's the kind of thing that pushes an ADP down 3 rounds. I mean, that's from where it probably belongs because everybody's looking at him disappointingly. Because he
pleasantly disappointed.
Pleasantly disappointed.
Yeah. All right, hey, 11-12. 11 and 12 on our consensus top tight end rankings. Cameron Brate, Jack Doyle. The story with Cameron Brate last year was, major ascension. Austin Seferian-Jenkins gone after 2 games. A lot of targets. You have Deshaun Jackson coming in there this season. You didn't really have a productive running game in Tampa Bay last year. We have him at number 11. He finished 7 last year. I think 11's the right spot for Cameron Brate. I really do.
Yeah.
Or as my rankings say, 15's the right spot. But 11 is the right spot for all of us.
I would be surprised. I mean, if he doesn't regress touchdown-wise. His touchdown number was extremely efficient. Now you add Deshaun Jackson in there. So Cameron Brate's a guy I'm not super excited about, even though he finished well last year, loved him last year. I just think that there's enough reasons where he can be the starting tight end and be productive for fantasy, but there's no reasons for me to say this guy's going to step up.
Or have a chance at top 3.
Or even
top 5.
I am sure that he's going to repeat. I'm pretty confident he's going to step back a little.
Yep.
That's all I have to say about Cameron.
Yeah, I like him. I'm not worried about Deshaun Jackson at all taking away. You had so last year Mike Evans had 12 touchdowns. Cameron Brate had 8. And then you had this laundry list of guys with 2 or less. And Jameis Winston, while granted I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Jameis Winston through college, through his pro career, he does favor the tight end. Last year, 31% of Tampa Bay's red zone targets went to the tight end. That's 6th in the league. So I don't think they're going to get away from him. It's fair to expect his touchdowns to go down.
I was going to say, I'll water bet you on 5 or less touchdowns.
Oh, I'll take that.
Ooh.
You'll take it?
Yeah. Hey, we won. All right.
Water bet.
We haven't had a bet in years.
It feels that way.
I'm going to stay out of this one, but I would be on Andy's side. I think 5 or less.
All right, Jack Doyle, number 12. Goodbye, Dwayne Allen. Hello, Jack Doyle. Last year finished number 13. I think that there is a lot of optimism out there. I'm not going to jump in on the Jack Doyle bandwagon. I think Jack Doyle comes out and does exactly what he did last year, which is not somebody I draft. I mean, he's 59 for 584 and 5 touchdowns. I think Eric Swoop is it Swoop or Swope?
I think it's Swope.
I think it's pronounced Swope, but it's spelled Swoop.
It's
right.
both.
It's like Jalen Richard.
Yeah,
It's
whatever it is, both of them, both Swoop and Swope will affect Jack Doyle this year.
It's actually Swappy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We've all had it wrong the whole time.
Off.
Look, the deal with Jack Doyle is going to do more for Andrew Luck in real life than he will do for your fantasy team. I've got him. I got him down the list. I don't know who's pulling him up into the 12 range. I got him right around 13. So, guess it's me.
Look, I like Jack Doyle.
I like his quarterback.
Well, we like his quarterback, and we like the fact that his quarterback favors the tight end. 38% of red zone touchdowns, or 38% of red zone touchdowns. Man, I'm having a hard time getting this one
you
out.
said that fine.
To the tight end for Indianapolis. Dwayne Allen is gone. Maybe.
Yeah, no Moncrief last year though. How big is he in the red zone? I mean, that's
but
you got Dwayne Allen in the red zone.
Jack Doyle did get paid. So if you want to buy into that narrative, which it factors into how I believe that they will use him, you had this is a very small sample size, granted, but this was Jack Doyle's breakout year. 2 games without Dwayne Allen. He was almost 6 PPR points more. He had the one game where he was the guy. He was the focal point of the offense, went 9 for 78 with a touchdown. I just think that there is a lot to like about Jack Doyle, especially considering that he's going to be free.
Well, I was going to say, is he a streamer for you then?
He's the type of guy that if I miss out on Reed or Eifert, and I guess I'll throw Rudolph into that list as well, and I just completely punt, Doyle's going to be one of my late-round target.
Number 13 is Hunter Henry. 14 is Martellus Bennett, and 15 is Antonio Gates. What do we know about Hunter Henry? What do we think about him coming into the season? I'm very optimistic about Hunter Henry. I have him at number 10 in my standard list. I don't think the touchdown totals are an outlier for Hunter Henry. In fact, I think he's one of those guys that I put in that double-digit potential this year. He only had 36 catches. 8 of them were touchdowns. Where do you see Hunter Henry? Who put in this tight end year 2 blossom?
I did. I took a look at tight ends who really they broke out their second year. You saw some guys who have huge reception jumps. Jimmy Graham jumped up over 60 receptions. Gronk 50. Jason Witten over 50. And the counterpoint to Hunter Henry, Antonio Gates had a monster jump from 24 to 81 receptions. So a big jump is possible for Hunter Henry. I just want to, historically, it's not unprecedented to see a tight end take the leap in year 2. However, guys who come in with big touchdowns their rookie year, which Hunter Henry had the second most touchdowns from a tight end rookie since 2000. The number 1 was Gronk. They just don't that number does not take a huge jump. I mean, it's possible he gets to 10, but my problem with Hunter Henry, and I have him much lower than you guys do, is Antonio Gates is coming back. And
he's free, whereas Henry, for some reason, is in the 7th round. So as much as I like Henry,
because
I'm not
people are buying into the young guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't spend a 7th-round pick on Hunter Henry.
Yeah, I mean, you guys just said both sides of it. Hunter Henry was drafted as coming out of college. He looked like he was going to be one of the better tight ends. He came to a team that uses the tight end. And when Gates leaves, Hunter Henry is fantastic. He's one of my favorite dynasty tight ends. But this year, while Gates is there, he's not just getting the job over Gates.
Henry in the 7th or Martellus Bennett in the 10th standard league. Well, who'd you take?
Bennett. I'd rather get a 7th-round wide receiver.
I'd probably take Henry.
All right, number 15 is Antonio Gates. He's been a top 12 tight end every single season since 2004. Does it stop this year? Is it over this year? Because I think it is. I think it's over this year, but I still think he's going to give you some good games.
Yeah, it's all about the touchdowns. For Hunter Henry, I was going to say 42% of his touchdown or fantasy points came from touchdowns, which was the highest for a top 20 tight end. Antonio Gates was 3rd on that list with 34% of his points came from touchdowns. So I think that he can still finish in the top 12. It's possible, but I believe I have both Gates and Henry slightly outside, just kind of destroying each other's value.
Yeah.
All right, so guys, name me a tight end not mentioned on the show so far today, so outside the top 15, that you think has the potential to finish in the top 15. So this would be a sleeper tight end. Give me a name. Who is it?
Sure.
Mike, why don't you give me yours?
Sure, I'll jump in here. This is major risk as far as will this guy actually come through. I don't know what his current ADP is. I imagine it's probably in the 10th, but Jay, can you pull that up?
It is in the 12th.
The 12th, okay. But Ladarius Green, it's known the story with him last year, signed a lucrative contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then all this weird news of is he going to retire? He's still not over a concussion issue. He played just a handful of games last year, but in those games he made a huge impact, almost 17 yards per reception. I mean, he was a huge play guy. That it was finally that the Twitter crowd, free Ladarius Green from San Diego. We just wanted to see it. You caught a glimpse, a tiny little glimpse of it from Pittsburgh. So if he can in fact play 14 or more games, I think Ladarius Green is an easy tight end 1. But the percentage chance that he plays 14 or more games, I would put in like the 20% mark.
Right.
Jason, who's your sleeper?
Very similarly, and he's going one pick later for tight end sake, is Zach Miller. Zach Miller is a guy who, I mean, if you buy our Ultimate Draft Kit, you're going to see one of the highest numbers you can get when it comes to the risk rating on this guy. He didn't play a game in 2012 or 2013 or 2014. Like, literally missed 3 years.
He's like Tim Hightower.
Yeah, 2015 was
Called
his
a
second.
sabbatical, Jason.
Yeah, his second rookie season. He's been very injury prone. However, look, Zach Miller has been very productive when he's on the field. In fact, through week 11 last year, he was the tight end 5, so you know he can get it done as a top 10 guy. Obviously, Alshon's gone, which I think could help him, but Glennon comes in. Glennon used him right in his rookie year, so I think Zach Miller could be one of those guys that finishes the year as a top 10.
I'll throw out the reception leader at the position.
It's not a bad way to go.
Which is Dennis Pitta. He had 86 receptions last year, only 2 touchdowns. But in PPR leagues, he finished number 8, so I'll throw him out there as a guy who, outside the top 15 in our rankings, has the potential to be in there if he can somehow put up more than a couple touchdowns. Historically,
his touchdowns was so weird.
He's had a 7-touchdown year before, but you got to go back to 2012 for it. So
no Steve Smith?
Yeah, no Steve Smith.
No Kamar Aiken. Am I right?
True. I just throw him out there.
No,
he's certainly a streaming guy that I'd be really, really excited to stream in certain matchups.
Yeah, those touchdowns were so bizarre from Dennis Pitta, but PPR, man, that guy is that is about as steady as you can go.
All right, that does it for today's early 2017 tight end ranking episode. Hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't listened to our running back and our wide receiver episodes yet, go ahead and scroll on your podcast app and click on those. Subscribe to the show. A lot of good information in there. And then next week we're going to come back with our quarterbacks. We'll be getting into rookies soon, so you know who to pay attention to for the upcoming NFL draft.
It's coming.
Oh, I cannot wait.
It's coming.
Cannot wait. So thanks for tuning in. We will be back. We'll be on YouTube right after the show for the show after the show. Underpants.
Yes.
All right. That's all I need to say.
Check out fantasyjocks.com for some trophies. The promo code is footballers.
See ya.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.